Hello and welcome to my video on the Duelist Kingdom arc for the Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters anime. So, before this begins, I'm going to preface, I will not be reviewing the filler arc. So, filler is basically done when the manga that goes alongside the anime, which is the comic book version of it, um, is printed weekly in the Shonen Jump magazine or just any weekly anime magazine, and the anime does makes the episodes. Uh, the weekly ones are only like 10, 12 pages long per week, and the anime would cover that like a couple of chapters in maybe one or two episodes. So sometimes when they've caught up, they'll create the filler to give the manga some breathing room, so that way the manga can get ahead. So then the weekly anime can then start going ahead with the adapting the manga. So that means episode 28 I skipped. I'm pretty sure that one is canon, but I just could not care less about it. I didn't bother checking the manga for it because that's how I figured out which ones were canon, which ones are filler. And then there was the first 6 minutes of episode 41 is canon. But then the rest of the episode, when Rebecca shows up, is not canon. Then there's also the first virtual world arc, that's not canon. But the Duke Devlin and the Dungeon Dice Monsters is canon, because he's literally on the cover of the ninth volume to the manga. So, with that being said, let's dive into it. So, Yu-Gi-Oh is a trading card game. The anime is essentially designed to sell the cards that go along with it, and it was also it was written and illustrated. The manga version of it was done by Kazuki Takahashi, who also designed a lot of the cards for the anime. And initially, his manga was completely different to what the show is. It also did have an anime referred to as Season Zero by a lot of fans, where it's a lot more darker. Where basically, we see Yugi solving the Millennium Puzzle, um, and it's a new game every week or every chapter, until we get to the monsters and wizards side of things, and fans start to love that because the only two trading cards back in the 90s was, well, the main one was Magic the Gathering, and then Pokemon had, I think, just started, and around the time when the manga came out in 1996. um, and so yeah, it became really popular to the point where Kazuki Takahashi, may he rest in peace, ended that run of the manga and then solely focused on the trading card portion of it. And I'm still pretty heavily into it now. I take breaks every now and again, but like this is like my pendulum list uh, right here. And I do have a Yu-Gi-Oh channel, which is called Dark Rebellion HQ. If someone would like to remind me to link that or share it on my community tab, that will be greatly appreciated because I probably will forget. Anyway, so the whole premise of the Duelist Kingdom arc is Yugi, the main protagonist, his who has the Millennium, one of the seven Millennium items. He has the Millennium Puzzle. He's also the reincarnation, essentially, of the Pharaoh because they both look alike. And like 3,000 years ago, during ancient Egypt, or 5,000 if you watch the Four Kids dub, um, there were during this Pharaoh's time, there was the seven Millennium items, and they'd also play games, shadow games, by using stone tablets of monsters. And eventually, this nameless pharaoh sealed it all away when he died as well with the seven millennium items. Um, and so then 3,000 or 5,000 years later, Yugi, who looks is the spitting image of this nameless pharaoh, as well as a whole bunch of other people, he solves the Millennium Puzzle, thus reigniting the Shadow Games again. But the creator of Duel Monsters Pegasus J. Crawford or Maximilian Pegasus in the dub. I will be flipping between both dubbed and sub names because for this rewatch, I watched the subbed version because I just did not want to deal with the 4K censors. Or sorry, not 4K, 4Kids. I mean, technically they still go now by 4K media, but that's neither here nor there. And so Pegasus, who is the creator of Duel Monsters, after catching wind of Yugi defeating Seto Kaiba, a Duel Monsters prodigy, invites him to take part in his tournament on his island called the Duelist Kingdom Tournament. Uh, Holds a shadow game with Yugi, um, and they duel. Yugi loses in time, and through Pegasus' Millennium Eye steals the soul of Yugi's grandfather. And so Yugi, as well as his friend Jinochi, who is wants to enter the tournament to win the prize money to save his sister's eyesight, as well. Then, of course, Anzu and Honda, their two other friends, travel to Duelist Kingdom in order to save Yugi's grandfather, as well as get the prize money for Jinochi. So the main objective of Yu-Gi-Oh is to reduce your opponent's life points to zero, but there are of course other ways of doing it. And as the years have progressed, there's been even more ways like FTKs, OTKs, and all that stuff. FTK means first turn kill, and then OTKs are one turn kills, and so on and so forth to the point where we have a massive ban list in place where there are certain cards that when they get released are so broken that they have to be forbidden from tournament play, and then other cards get limited to one copy per deck. Some copies get limited to two copies, but the max you can run if it's not on the ban list is three copies per deck. And each monster has a attack and defense, so you can summon it in attack mode, which is face up like this, or it can be summoned face down defense, but you can also special summon a monster instead of normal summoning or tributing, and then they can be special summoned in face up defense like so. Anyway, that's just the crash course of things, because the anime, the Duelist Kingdom arc does not follow these rules. So what do I mean by that? Well, certain monsters that have high stars, like each monster has between 1 and 13 stars. So if it's more than 4 stars, it needs a tribute to be played. So if it's between 1 and 4 stars, you can normal summon it, no problem. If it's 5 or 6, you need 1 tribute. If it's 7 and above, 7 or 8, it's 2 tributes. If it's 9 and above, it's 3. And then that's how it's always been. But in the Duelist Kingdom, they don't follow that, and that's as we grew up watching the anime, that's how we learned how to play the game. So that's what we thought the rules were. So in the anime, for the Duelist Kingdom arc, they just ignore that. They just summon things, and things that are supposed to be fusion monsters don't get fusion summoned. They need the fusion spell of polymerization here to make these fusion monsters. I'm not even going to get into XC or Pendulum or Synchro because then I would lose about half of the non-Yu-Gi-Oh fans here. Anyway, so there was a time, I also noticed whilst I was rewatching this, that there are multiple times where both Yugi and Jinochi should have either won or lost. So let me explain. So in episode 2, after Yugi defeated Kaiba, with the Exodia, he gets a videotape from Pegasus J. Crawford, like I said, inviting him to the game. They have a shadow game, and the field is Pegasus has control of the Dragon Piper, as well as Yugi's Komori Dragon that he stole, and Yugi has just summoned the Dark Magician. The Dark Magician has 2,500 attack. Komori Dragon has about 1,500, 1,400, and Dragon Piper has about 2 to 300. So at this point, they're only playing with 2,000 life points instead of the mandatory 8 for actual play. So Yugi, if he wasn't so sentimental, could have attacked the Dragon Piper and won. But because of the plot demanded Yugi to attack a Mori Dragon, which then of course dragged out the duel, That then led to Yugi losing and Solomon Moto getting his soul stolen. Um, so yeah, that happened. Um, so then of course they travel to the island, like I said, and the goal is to get 10 star chips in order to enter Pegasus Castle. Well, only there can only be like a small handful. I think the max is like four. Um, yeah, there's about four because in the end, it's Yugi, Jinochi, My Valentine, and Bandit Keith who make it to the finals. But there was a point where I noticed where Jinochi should have lost, and that was with the match against Bones. But also Bones should have lost that duel as well. So it's a kind of Schrodinger's cat situation. So what do I mean by that? Well, there was rules in this that do not exist. Where depending on the field that you played on, depended on certain attack bonuses that you would get. So if you played certain types of monsters on certain fields, they get type bonuses. So Joey is forced to duel in the cemetery a cemetery field, which boosts zombie types. And so Bones, being coached by Bandit Keith, is told to summon regular monsters so that they can die and then be brought back as zombies. That's not how that works. When you being used by Call of the Haunted as well, the zombie monsters, unless they have, as long as they still have attack points, cannot be destroyed by battle. That's another thing that can't happen. So technically, Jinochi should have killed Bones that way. He's as Jinochi's attacking, Bones should have still been taking damage. But because this was the Wild Wild West in the early stages of Yu-Gi-Oh, that just did not happen. As well, Joey should have lost because Bones had a big board of monsters, but he'd only attack with one. You can attack with multiple monsters in a turn. That doesn't stop you. So yeah, it's a catch 22 thing. Like, should Jinochi have won? Should he have lost? It just depends on what turn you're looking at it and the fact that it's the anime, the season one of the anime, they're not all that great. So eventually, Yugi and Jinochi make it to Duelist Kingdom, well, are about to enter Duelist Kingdom, except they get stopped by Kaiba because Kaiba went into hiding and then eventually came to the island because Pegasus kidnapped his brother because Pegasus wants to take over Kaiba's corporation, the Kaiba Corporation. And to do that, he needs Kaiba out of the picture, but he also needs to defeat Yugi in a duel, so that way the big five in the Kaiba Corporation can sell their shares to Pegasus, so that way he will have 51% of the company and could then out Kaiba and take control of the company that way. And so he's forced then to duel Yugi, and Kaiba wins, but that's because he can't. But again, because of bullshittery, was at fault. Regardless of the bullshittery, Kaiba technically should have won that duel, because of two factors of the bullshittery. One, um, Yugi using summoning Karibo and using the spell card Multiply does not create an infinite number of Karibos. It actually only attributes Karibo to summon five or as many Karibo tokens as you can on your in your monster zones. Um, the other bullshittery that Yugi does is he uses polarization, a spell card called Spell Shattering Arrow, and Mammoth Graveyard to fuse with the Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon. That is not something that you can do. But because Yugi managed to bullshit this into effect, it then resulted in the Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon being killed. But then again, when Yugi finally managed to cut one of the heads off of the decaying Blue Eyes Ultimate, it only did one head because apparently each head has 3,000 attack. That's not how that works. But eventually, Kaiba realizes that he's about to lose the duel, and so he decides to say, "Look, if you win this duel, I'm going to stand up here. the next time you attack, the force of the blowback, because they're using the first generation of dual discs, the shockwave could ripple and fling him off the side of the castle, killing him. And so the spirit in the puzzle goes to attack, but then Yugi calls it off. The little Yugi calls it off, and so then Yugi loses the duel. But that should not have happened on in the fact of Yugi fusing Mammoth Graveyard, Spell Shattering Arrow with the Blue Eyes Ultimate, and Blue Eyes Ultimate doesn't have three heads, and it can't attack three times. Like I said, Wild Wild West. Eventually, they all get in. Like I said, the four finalists are Yugi, Jinochi, Maya Valentine, and Bandit Keith, and so they have to duel it out. So it's Yugi versus Mai, which is actually a really good duel for the two parts that it was. It is also the first time that we get to see the Black Luster Soldier, the Ritual Monster, and then we see Bandit Keith versus Jinochi, who manages to win, even with Bandit Keith cheating. And then it's the finals with Yugi versus Jinochi, and yeah, Yugi definitely won. Obviously, he won. But like even in real world implications, when Jinochi successfully uses the Time Wizard card to blow up Yugi's field, or well, in the actual card game, it's supposed to blow up his field, but it actually just advances time by 1,000 years, creating 1,000 dragon from Baby Dragon. But it also then allowed Yugi to tribute his Dark Magician to bring out Dark Sage, which allowed him to win. And then it's the 5-part duel between Yugi and Pegasus J. Crawford. And the duel is amazing. Pegasus, with his Millennium Eye, not only can he steal people's souls, he has the ability to read people's minds. And so he's always able to read Yugi's mind, to then see what he has in his hand, see what he's playing, and stuff. And so little Yugi, comes up with an idea of swapping, changing who takes control through the Millennium Puzzle, because Big Yugi the Pharaoh can do that, through the puzzle, and so they do that, which then results in them destroying Toon World, which is a card that Pegasus loves because he's American. He loves cartoons. That's what he grew up on, and he grew massive appreciation for cartoons. But once that gets destroyed, his entire demeanor changes, and that's when he conjures up the Shadow Game, which then stops Yugi from doing the Mind Shuffle. But eventually, Yugi wins again, slightly more bullshittery, by using again the Karibo and Multiply spell card. But he also gets out the Magician of Black Chaos, which is another beautiful ritual card that I need to add into my collection. And so eventually, Pegasus does what he promised. He frees Yugi's soul, he frees Mokuba and Kaiba, the Kaiba brothers' souls, because he also took their souls. And it turns out the reason why he wanted to do all this is because the love of his life died tragically when they were both 17. And so when he received the Millennium Eye from Shadi, he was able to see her rather briefly. And so he designed a card based off of her, and so he wanted to use Kaiba tech to be able to see his beloved one more time. And that's the whole reason why he did this. The whole reason why he stole three souls, almost had Yugi killed, because one of the player killers, Panic, had access to pyrotechnics. And then as well, when Bandit Keith traps them in a cave, they almost get trapped in a labyrinth from the Paradox Brothers. But then Bakura, another friend, who's also possessed by the Millennium Ring, and he'll come up later on, steals the Millennium Eye from Pegasus. Literally, they have a shadow game using their items, but because Pegasus is weak from the duel with from Yugi, he loses, and Bakura literally goes up and rips the Millennium Eye, out of Pegasus. Now, in the manga, this kills Pegasus. Pegasus does not survive this, and that's why he's never seen again in the manga. But in the anime, they keep him alive. This is the only time that even in the Japanese version, he is kept alive, and he does make appearances in like filler. I can't remember if I don't think he makes any appearances in like the main continuity of the stuff. You know, the Battle City arc, and then of course the Pharaoh getting his name, the last arc in the show. I don't think he makes any appearances in that, but then of course in the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, he does make an appearance, and then again in Bonds Beyond Time, he does make an appearance in that. Um, but in the manga, he is dead. And so, yeah, then of course we jump to the Dungeon Dice Monster arc where Duke Devlin created this game. He was literally with Pegasus just before the start of the Duelist Kingdom, and because Pegasus hasn't responded to him, he blames Yugi for that. He tricks Joey into becoming a dog for him, you know, wearing a dog costume and all that, to then force Yugi to play him in Dungeon Dice Monsters, which is a game he invented in order to for Yugi to quit playing the game and to prove that he was a cheater and stuff. And I forgot how much of a dick Duke Devlin is in this four-part story, because when they do go to sit down to do the Dungeon Dice Monsters, he doesn't explain the rules to Yugi. He expects Yugi to just be able to figure it out, and it takes a while for Yugi to do so. But by then it's almost too late. But eventually Yugi wins, and then in the anime, Duke Devlin hears back from Industrial Illusions for them to sign the contract to produce the Dungeon Dice Monsters. And that is the end of the Duelist Kingdom arc. So what did I think about it, after, this rewatch of, it's been, 2 decades since it came out. And, like, it's not that great because again it doesn't follow the rules, but I love it for what it was. I love the fact that it was one of those Saturday morning cartoons that I would get up and watch, and it was one of the big three that was around of which one do you like, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, or Digimon. Sometimes Digimon can be swapped with Beyblades. That are it's a show that Beyblades and Yu-Gi-Oh and Metabots are shows that and Digimon are shows that kind of try to replicate the formula of Pokemon. Digimon it does have some success. Metabots we don't really hear much about it. Blades has had some success. It's in a new iteration now, and Yu-Gi-Oh is in the Western inside of things. It's the third most popular trading card game behind Pokemon and Magic the Gathering. But in Japan, it's actually the most popular card game there. It goes Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, Magic, or Yu-Gi-Oh, Magic, Pokemon. I always get that one mixed up. So, like I said, I enjoyed it. I enjoy not having to deal with the 4K, 4Kids dub changes. Taking out guns, removing references of death, and they replace it with the what was it called? The Shadow Realm, or being sent to the next dimension. That's another one that they used for Dragon Ball, and stuff. So I'm looking forward to delving into the Battle City arc side of things. But again, I'm gonna have to skip a huge chunk because we have that because then it goes into the second virtual world arc, which is to be honest isn't all that great. But I will of course get to the Battle City next month. So thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I'm not sure what video is next because I don't have my book on hand, and I'm actually recording this on the 29th of February, before this is due, because this is the longest amount of episodes I've had to watch for one of my TV show reviews. Anyway, thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I shall catch you all on Monday for another brand new movie review.